Right, so this video will be the story of me dislocating my shoulder, an experience I can recommend to anyone who's feeling adventurous. Anyhow, so a few weeks ago my university was hosting this introduction week, mainly focused towards all the new first year students. It's an introduction week to welcome everybody into the city with a bunch of activities and beer, sports and beer, parties and beer. The entire week is not really focused so much on the study side of uni life, but rather on the fun things. Now in this week you've also got a bunch of associations in Delft trying to acquire new members. You try and convince all those shares, as we call them, that your club is the place to be. Now what's with me being a board member of my little mud enthusiast club? I of course also had to be a part of promoting for our club in that week. So on the Monday of that intro week, there's always a crowded info market where all the associations have little stands, hand out flyers and talk to new people to convince them to join up. Now we usually build a double A-frame stand with some banners and an obstacle, just have something fun in there. But we don't really have a club car, which means that we have to transport all those beams, ropes, barrels and whatnot from our obstacle course to the central market square. And we usually do that by pushing these little carts, while cycling, because, you know, we're Dutch. You are never going to prevent a Dutch man or gal from trying to cycle when they're transporting goods. It is by far the most effective way to get around. Now you can probably already see where this is pretty much going. So I was pushing this cart right here. Well, for like the first kilometer I felt that I was so important that I shouldn't have to push this cart, but after a while I thought I'd help out and just be nice. Now right after crossing one of those small lovely Dutch canal bridges, there was this tunnel. And you see we were transporting this exact cart right here with the sticks sticking out. Now we didn't realize until the last second that the sticks were sticking out so high and the tunnel was only so small. Anyhow, the cart came to a quick halt and I was still pushing the cart in this split second, and then my arm popped out. So right after the car stopped, I felt this pain in my shoulder, and I still felt like I could move the arm if I really wanted to. I just kind of didn't really want to, what's with all the pain coming out of that. But the pain didn't really seem to go away. The arm was also sticking out in a weird way, so pretty quickly I realized that my shoulder was probably dislocated. Fast forward a few minutes and a buddy and I were cycling towards my general practitioner. Now, since my arm was sticking out the socket, I guess it was pulling on the muscles. It just meant that I sort of had to lean over in order to reduce the pain just ever so slightly. And that was pretty much the only way that I could be slightly comfortable. Still very much uncomfortable, but slightly more comfortable. But after a bit of cycling, we arrived at my GP. We had to stand in line for a bit, then we figured out we were actually standing in the wrong line. Then we had to stand around for a bit more, and when it was finally my turn, the desk lady figured out I was in slight discomfort. So she sends me to the waiting room, because the doctor was busy. So I'm waiting there, leant over in a chair in just slight discomfort. All this time I also had to pee really badly, but I didn't really want to get up. But after a while, it was finally my turn to go see the doctor. Now, you know, I'm under the impression that my GP doctor is a trained medical professional, an expert in her field, and she's going to pop that baby right back in. And I'll be on my merry way out of there doing more fun things. But when I walk into her office, she gives me the weakest handshake I've felt in years. And then she told me I'd have to go to the hospital because she wasn't going to put that thing back in. So skip forward a few more minutes and we're back on the bikes. And we basically had to cycle all the way across town to get to the hospital because it was on the other side of the town. Now at this point, I wasn't really having so much fun anymore. I kind of really wanted to bite down on something. It was a mix of actual pain and just being uncomfortable. There was no comfortable position to really hang in, and my muscles were also sort of aching because I was leant over the entire time. It was definitely the second worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life. I mean, there's been a few times where I've busted open my head and had to get stitches for that, but the worst one probably was when I managed to rip my arm open while climbing down a rain pipe, drainage pipe, with one of those anti-burglar spikes sticking out. I do remember rolling around in pain on the floor after that one. Anyways, the moral of the story is, just sit inside and play video games. It's much safer than real life. But we're not quite done with the story just yet. During this rather uncomfortable bicycle ride, we were considering looking up YouTube tutorials on how to reset a dislocated shoulder. But I kinda decided against it because the guy I was cycling with is also a mechie student and I know how incompetent we are. But then we finally arrived at the hospital's emergency department and they went out to help me immediately. Right after they registered me in the system, since I'd never actually been in the hospital before. But they did give me this very cool wristlet with a barcode. Anyhow, you'd think that when you enter the emergency department of a hospital, you get some quick help. But you'd be really disappointed right there. We enter into the first room and the doctor comes over and asks me what's wrong with my shoulder. and thereafter exactly how I managed to dislocate it. Now I had to answer those two questions a lot that day, so I kinda wish I had written it down on my forehead just to save some time. Just every new room I went into, I got asked the same two fucking questions. But after that, the doctor disappeared and I had to wait a few more minutes before I could go off and have some x-rays taken. Then after that, they put me in this different patient room with some curtains where I could finally have my shoulder placed back in. The only problem was they didn't really tell me when this mythical Dr. Savior person would show up, so I waited, patiently. Then that felt slightly uncomfortable, so I waited while lying down with my head on this little stool, with my arms sticking out so I could sort of lie down comfortably. And then finally, after only about 40 minutes to an hour, some doctor shows back up in his room and starts talking about anesthesia. So the logical next step was that he jammed a gigantic needle into my left arm and started pouring liquid in there. I seriously think that thing was filled up with about half liters of God knows what. It was clear. It looked like water. Anyways, after that, he jammed an IV into my right arm and started feeding morphine precipitate or something into that. He told me that I would probably start feeling lightheaded and I might start saying some weird things. So I was fully awaiting the Vietnam flashbacks.
Where the fuck is Jeff?
Yo, Rocco, you get that ass, man! Why you laughing at me?
But they never really came. The room just started spinning around like when you have a bit too much beer. It was just like that, but minus the happy thoughts. Anyways, after this, they are apparently finally fucking ready to put this thing back in. Now everything this day had been leading up to this very moment right here. And I thought it was going to be painful, because despite the room spinning around, my arm didn't really start hurting any less from the anesthesia. And I'd also seen that one scene in Lost where I think Jack also dislocated his shoulder, so I was starting to feel slightly nervous here. Anyways, a new doctor walked in, completely different doctor. There's multiple doctors working there apparently. But the doctor walked in and I guess she brought her assistant and also her doctor friends and maybe even her extended family. I don't know, at the end I think there was so many fucking people in that room, there was even somebody just peeking through the curtain. I felt like a showroom item. Or maybe I was imagining those people, maybe that was part of the anesthesia, I don't even know. But the doctor finally moves over towards the arm and she says she'll first try this very simple lever technique to pop the thing back in, and I shit you not, the thing pops back in straight away. And immediately all the pain stops. And all I could think was, why the fuck did I have to wait so goddamn long for this? I mean, even I could have fucking done this. Now, of course, I didn't really say that out loud, mostly because I'm a very nice person. But I kinda wanted to leave at that point because I wanted to go to the info market to do some promo for my club. But before I could leave, they wanted to x-ray me again. And they also wouldn't really let me walk, even though the room had stopped spinning at this point and I felt completely fine. I even tried pointing towards some stuff with the arm because it felt fine, but they kept knocking my arm down, telling me I couldn't do that. So I was carted off. Now I also, on a side note, think I've been exposed to enough radiation this year, was with 5 x-rays being taken on my shoulder and then this fancy 3D x-ray scan of my head, I guess, for my wisdom teeth. Anyways, after the x-rays, they carted me back into that room and started lecturing me on what I could and could not do with the arm, while also preparing this very fancy sling for me. So basically, I couldn't use the arm for anything, and I also had to wear this sling. The nice doctor there said I couldn't even use my computer, because I would have had to lift my arm up to use the keyboard. So I totally, fully, and completely listened to my doctor's advice by using my computer on the same day and going on a windsurfing weekend about 5 days later. Now I have tried using the arm and shoulder as little as possible while doing stuff. If I had just listened to the doctors, they'd have me waiting an entire month before I could even lift the shoulder. But that is just a bit boring for me. But I have noticed that I can't fully use it, and when I put too much stress on it or move it around too fast in certain directions, I do feel the effect. So that does kind of suck right there. The recovery period is definitely a lot longer than I thought initially, because I thought you'd just pop the thing back in and you'd be fine straight away. But it appears not. I actually wanted to train a fair amount this year for the survival running thing and partake in some runs, but kinda looks like I'm gonna have to postpone that. I've also talked to a fair few people that have dislocated their shoulders before, and they all tell me that you have to follow a recovery program slowly and retrain the muscles around your shoulders so that it doesn't pop out again. Because apparently, if you do it a second time or a third time, you're pretty much fucked for your entire life because you'll have a weak shoulder. So I might just have to look into some physiotherapy here. Then again, next time I go to the doctor, I also kinda wanna try and wear the sling around the other arm to see if she'll notice. I'm not sure if that's a good idea, but we'll see. Anyhow, that's the full story of me dislocating my shoulder. In the end, I was back at the info market on time for some promo, and I also chugged half a bottle of chocolate sauce, which is also a terrible idea. I would not recommend that to anyone. It's pretty much a time bomb. For like the first 3 minutes I felt fine. Now mind you, it was after eating a bunch of pancakes. But then slowly, it started creeping up on me, and I felt like I had to throw up, so I had to go lie down. I guess that shit expands in your stomach. Just would not recommend doing that. Bad idea. Anyhow, stay cool, staying cool, and if you like the video, be sure to like it. And also, support me on Patreon. Apparently, YouTube does not deem me advertiser worthy. So, I might just start having to sell my body here. Bye!